Hey, mate. How wonderful is it to be back with you all for 2025? Can you believe that this is our 36th year on air? And over the break, we've unearthed some fantastic stories for you. Today, I'm at a secondary school on Victoria's Bellarine Peninsula, where plants and sustainability are growing throughout the curriculum. I'll show you around here a little later on, but first, here's what else is coming up on our first episode for the year. Jerry's got some houseplants that can become monsters in the garden.
By containing these plants, you've got a friend for life.
All gardeners have a lot of success and they have failures, including us. So today I want to share with you some of my wins and some of my losses.
For many of us, the notion of planting out annual flowers might conjure up images of petunias, snapdragons and marigolds. But with our scorching summer heat, it's time to consider native annuals.
And I'm exploring Adelaide Botanic Garden, where striking colours and shapes are blooming, making familiar landscapes seem new again.
I love it when I go to a place and I can see straight away that someone has put consideration into every little detail. Well, Tammy's visiting a garden where hard work and a lot of thought has really paid off.
Bold, sweeping and romantic. Words used to describe a naturalistic planting style that's widely associated with Dutch garden designer Piet Oudolf. It focuses on a blend of perennials and grasses, but has never really taken off with Aussie gardeners. I'm meeting a man who could change all that. Hi, Stephen.
Hi.
What an amazing garden you have.
Thanks.
How long did it take you to create this?
It's been 10 years in the making.
Wow. Horticulturist and garden designer Stephen Vellet has incorporated this naturalistic style into his own garden here in the foothills of the Blue Mountains of New South Wales.
Naturalistic style gardens are all about having plants grouped in mass, combining plants in long drifts, letting plants self-seed. It's that sort of wild style of garden, and it was all brought about by European garden designers, and in doing so, it's encouraging the biodiversity in a garden.
Stephen, I can see there's lots of different textures, colours, heights. Is this all part of the naturalistic planting style?
Well, yes it is, and it works well when you have flowers like the daisies, the umbelliferas like the sedums, the ball-type heads of the echinops. They all attract beneficial insects, bees and butterflies. Even honeyeaters visit this garden. The beds are themed in colours, and here we have blues and whites and mauves. It works really well. It gives you that sort of soothing feel to the garden, the movement, the verticals, the grasses, it all works. It gives you that sort of natural prairie feel that we're really, really after.
What happens across the seasons?
Well, very much a four-season garden, and now as we approach late summer, coming into autumn, we still have like the sedums that are out, the echinaceas are still showing, the heleniums. As we sort of come into autumn, the autumn tones will like go through the foliage where you'll get your golds and oranges. And then as we approach winter, we'll have the russets and the greys and the straw. It's very skeletal looking coming right into winter. And then right at the end, we cut everything down. It's put back into the soil and then come spring, all the spring bulbs emerge. It's fantastic. It's a really dramatic garden. People always talk about meadows are quite dreamy. There's a lot of movement. The grasses especially give you that movement through the garden. It's very relaxing.
Grasses are a major part of the naturalistic planting style. And I can see you've used a couple of different ones in your garden.
Yes, very much so. And this one in particular is Miscanthus flamingo.
How have you approached where you've put them?
Well, they're planted in drifts, they're spotted through. I have Miscanthus, panicums, ostrastipa. They all sort of create this movement through the garden, and it's beautiful to see as the wind sort of blows through it all. It's basically the backbone to the garden.
So how popular is this planting style in Australia?
Well, it's actually starting to become trendy as we're slowly starting to learn more and more about naturalistic style gardens.
And if someone were to try and do this at home, I mean, you've got space. How do we downsize that?
Choose grasses and perennials that are a little bit more smaller. Maybe some of the dwarf ones like this Yakashimama, which is very popular. You can actually buy a lot of these plants online. There's a lot of specialist nurseries that offer tube stock. You can propagate it by cuttings, seeds, divisions from friends. It can be easily achieved. Rip out all your lawn and you won't have to mow again. Why not have beauty, flowers, and a meadow rather than having lawn?
Your plants are looking really healthy.
Thanks.
What do you do?
Well, it's all about having great, organic, healthy soil.
And when you talk about organics in the soil, you're referring to things like compost and aged manures?
Blood and bone and lime. Lime's quite essential. You know, our soils in Australia are quite acidic. So these being European plants, they do like a higher pH. And actually adding lime to the soil will increase the available nutrients.
What I like about Stephen's garden is that it offers beauty all year round. It looks incredible in summer with its colours and textures, fades gracefully in winter and provides food for local wildlife. There's something here for all gardeners to think about. It's truly inspirational.
Are slaters good or bad for the garden? Well, both. Slaters are a normal part of the garden ecosystem. They eat decaying organic matter, recycle nutrients and build soil. But they can be a problem if they're eating your plants. Rather than kill slaters, the aim is to redirect them. If you've just sown some seeds, try laying out orange rinds to distract slaters from the tender new shoots. For an easy DIY guard to protect young seedlings, add plastic pots with the bottom cut out. And where possible, aim to keep fruiting plants up off the ground. That way slaters can get about their business away from your plants.
Is it possible to over-fertilise your plants? Well, yes, it is. It's called fertiliser burn. And what happens is the leaves go brown, especially around the edges, then they dry off and then they fall off. And that's in response, very often, to dry soil around the roots. Excessive nutrients can cause toxicity. So what you need to do is make sure before you put any fertiliser down is to water thoroughly, then the fertiliser, then water again. If you fertilise when the soil is moist, you'll be right.
What's the story with the crazy pandanus legs? Well, pandanus species thrive in coastal tropics, living in swamps, forests and beaches from Port Macquarie in New South Wales to Cape York in northern Queensland. And their crazy legs are in fact stilts or prop roots that take over from the main trunk when it withers. Now, this is an adaptation which allows the tree to either move, reshoot or stabilise in the shifting sands of their favoured coastal environment. In addition, they aid the plant by absorbing nutrients and water, all by capturing decaying organic matter on the surface of the ground. And it's easy to see why it's fast becoming the trendy plant for now.
The town of Drysdale is Warrawarran country on Victoria's Bellarine Peninsula, not too far from Geelong. plants and horticulture have deep roots at Bellarine Secondary College. And I'm taking you to meet some good friends of mine who are working on a project here at the school where sustainability, local food and the next generation are all growing up together.
It's going to be an excellent morning for planting. So what we're going to do today is onions. So we've actually got some more onions here this morning that we're going to prep.
Farm My School is a not-for-profit 1.5 acre farm that makes use of underutilised school land, connects young people to food growing skills and commercially supplies fresh food to the local community. Farm My School co-founders Ben and James are both professional gardeners with an eye for the social big picture.
I see schools as a really powerful piece of land already within communities. If we can grow food there, we're creating community resilience, we're creating food security, we're educating the school students and the communities around food systems and how to grow food. So it's a ridiculously powerful thing.
You're both gardeners, but you're really professional problem solvers. What are some of the ways that you're bringing about change?
School gardens are an amazing opportunity where, you know, they are the students' favourite place often. They're where principals take prospective parents or, you know, the politician who comes to the school. Yet they're often left neglected through the school holiday period in summer when they haven't been watered or not tended to or not harvested. So for us, trying to get around that problem was really the start of this whole Farm My School concept, where we could create a school garden that was actually a commercial model by making it a farm and actually producing food for the whole community.
Your storytelling has been so captivating from the start. It made me want to come along and be part of that original farm build. How did it all unfold?
We knew we had to do something big to transform what was a disused soccer pitch into a 1.5 acre farm.
We knew that we wanted to involve the community in that process. So we just thought, how can we bring that many people onto the farm to actually start building it?
So we came up with this idea to actually have a 24-hour no-dig, build a farm in a day event where we actually can bring people in, sell tickets to teach them how to do a no-dig garden and while getting them to work and actually build the farm. So we had over 600 paid guests come down to Bellarine Secondary College and laid cardboard over the whole field, and we started the beds with all organic inputs that we'd sourced from local waste materials. It was a pretty amazing event where we had food trucks, we had bands playing for the whole 24 hours. We got to night time, which was when you arrived, and we got the spotlights out. And we actually did so much that we ran out of extension leads to be able to go and do other sections of the farm, so we had to call it quits for the night. And all these punters who were here were just keen to keep going, so they came back at sort of 5 the next morning and we continued on in the morning. So yeah, it was an almighty effort and it was a fantastic event to be a part of.
It was nuts. The energy here. I mean, at midnight, people were just still chomping at the bit. People were ready. They were up and raring to go. And yeah, I've never experienced anything like it, ever. Now, the farm sells veggies at markets and through a veggie box program, which means they can employ professional farmers as well as student trainees through the Farmer Incubator program, designed to build pathways for new farmers. Paul has just finished Year 12 and is now employed as a paid part-time trainee.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, I can go literally from the school just straight over here and then have a job out in nature with all the birds and all the little bugs and stuff, learning so much about nature itself, but also just like how to sustain myself and grow food for myself and all sorts of stuff like that.
Sandy teaches horticulture at the school, and her classes never miss an opportunity for people to get their hands dirty.
I have been teaching horticulture for nearly 20 years. So the Year 10 class is a full year class for Farm My School, and a lot of the students choose to be in this program because they just love to be outside.
What sort of impact are you seeing it have on students?
I think it's really positive. Just getting outside and having it as a class is just a really beautiful thing, and it just like clears your mind and everything. I think some people might think that it's more for like older people, but like it's not, it's for everyone, and it's really like good for everyone to do, and it like brings everyone together of all ages.
I think it's really important for these students to become involved at an early age, to see the biodiversity that's happening in the farm compared to what we did have here, which was the old soccer pitch, and just being able to learn how they grow their food and then what do we do with it after that. The first term this year, the students were actually coming out to harvest and sending all the fruit and veg that we harvest down to the foods rooms for our food tech students to prepare. So trying to incorporate all that into the school curriculum as well.
It's made quite a positive impact. It's given kids the opportunity to come out, learn more about nature, involve it in all different classes such as ceramics, media, because you can come out, take photos of the farm, you can come out, get leaves to do imprints on the ceramics.
Wow, so it's kind of actually making its way into the broader school and all the subjects.
It's found its way into a lot of the subjects, including math and science and all that.
I love plants. I love the gardening. I have since I was the same age as these students, so it's really lovely to see some of the passion that's coming through for those students as well at such a young age.
Yeah, so it puts like the nutrients through the roots and stuff.
That's right. Yep. Ben and I are both passionate about environmental conservation, about engaging people to nature, about getting them into gardens, teaching them about food systems and where their food comes from. And literally all of those passions we have are now sort of interwoven into this project.
We wanted to reframe how a farm could operate, because a lot of farms, they're sort of out of sight, out of mind, and you've got the farmer, you know, toiling away by themselves. It's quite a solo sort of pursuit, and we wanted to change that, or try to change that, by bringing in more people, basically. I mean, we're all gardeners and we like to get our hands in the soil, but it's much more fun doing it with other people. And hopefully some other schools might go, actually, we've got those spaces in our schools, so why can't we look at the landscape a bit differently?
I used to overlook going onto farms and stuff thinking it's just dirty work, but it's amazing to be out on the farm. It's lively, and seeing multiple kids get involved with the farm, it makes it so much more fun.
On days when you're working by yourself, you get a lot of time to yourself to like think about stuff and all sorts of stuff like that. But when you're working with others, you get to chat, because you can just work with your hands and then talk.
I've learnt a lot about the farm and like the way things kind of work and like the community around it. But also I think I've kind of learnt things about myself as well, like just being outside and like planting things on the land. It's just a really good place to like reflect on everything. Yeah.
Some of the students here may be learning trade skills, but they're all learning life skills. They're not only the horticulturists and farmers of our future, they're the everything of our future. I like to imagine what our world would be like when everyone has an education grounded in the garden.
How can I grow my pumpkins vertically? Growing pumpkins vertically can happen on a fence line, a trellis, or an archway. It's a fantastic way to be economical with your space, because otherwise they can ramble everywhere. It also helps reduce fungal problems by increasing airflow. And it looks gorgeous. You can really get up close to see the beautiful produce. But some pumpkins can be heavy. So to prevent them from snapping off the vine or dragging the whole plant or structure down, you can simply just choose some smaller varieties or learn how to support the larger ones. You can give the individual fruit support by making hammocks from a stretchy material, such as old stockings. It's that simple, and your pumpkins will love you for it.
Now, I don't mean to panic you, but I have some breaking and alarming news. We've had reports of monsters in our midst. and they're threatening to claim your backyard as their own. Our reporter Jerry is on the scene with more.
Some popular plants are best in a pot. Plant them outside and they'll suddenly supersize and take over your whole garden. I'm going to introduce you to some undercover monsters that are better contained without any chance of them coming into contact with your garden soil. Who doesn't like ornamental figs? This is a variegated rubber tree, and there are many different tones, but this one with the pinkish hues is ruby. It's a wonderful houseplant. They tolerate heat, neglect, low water, low light levels, all sorts of things that could kill a plant won't kill this. But if you love them, they'll quickly grow and fill a room. And that's when a fatal mistake can occur. If you put these outside, you don't even need to plant them, because these little wispy roots will reach down into the soil and suddenly they'll supercharge the plant, it'll break the pot, and you've got a 40-metre specimen dominating your back garden. The only place where you can allow these to grow uncontained is in a large park. But you can prune them, and you can use the cuttings to propagate more. I've shown on Gardening Australia how you can use aerial layering as a technique to propagate these plants, so you can check out the website how to do it. By containing these plants, you've got a friend for life. The giant bird of paradise, Strelitzia nicolai, is deservedly really popular as a landscape plant. It's widely available, but in this nursery, it's only sold as an indoor houseplant, and for a very good reason. It has tropical looks, flowers freely, is tough in drought and will grow quickly. You can distinguish it from its smaller cousin by its blue and cream flowers, over the lurid orange of the smaller type. However, this plant comes with a warning. If you plant this in the ground, you'll need plenty of space, because this plant is fireproof, drought-proof, frost-proof, and it'll rapidly grow into a clump 8 metres high and form a suckering clump 5 metres wide. Now, this also self-seeds, and it's emerging as an environmental weed. You'll need an excavator to remove one of these once they've settled in. Isn't it amazing that a plant like this can be simply tamed by a plastic pot? The fruit salad plant, Monstera deliciosa, has iconic leaves which launched 1,000 plant collections, including mine when I was a youngster in London. Now, these fenestrations only develop on mature leaves. You can see on this seedling here, there's none at all. Now, this plant is quite easily maintained indoors, and it's a fabulous house plant. I managed them as a house plant for many years just by pruning them back in spring, using the stems as cuttings, and preventing the aerial roots from making contact with the walls, because they can damage plaster. If you plant one out in the garden, it will need managing as well, otherwise it'll disappear up a tree or over the neighbour's fence. We're also learning that this is an emerging environmental weed in coastal New South Wales and Queensland. So if you grow the fruit salad plant, eat the fruit. They do taste like fruit salad. Manage the plants, manage the seed, and you and this plant will have a long and productive life together. Look at these bonsai. They're a perfect example of how to manage an undercover monster, because most of these are forest trees. So all you need to remember to manage large plants is how to prune and how to pot.
How good are these student-made scarecrows? I reckon there's been plenty of lessons learned around materials recycling, creativity, and of course, structural integrity. Now, Batman, Millie is someone who's learned plenty of lessons in her garden, and she's here to share with us a few of her hits and misses.
This garden is incredibly productive, but for me, it is also experimental. I'm always trying things that I haven't tried before. I've had hits and misses along the way. And even if things don't always go to plan, there are lessons to be taken, and sometimes unexpected benefits. Let's look back to late winter when I planted my first shallot crop. So you just really nestle them into the soil surface. The worst thing that you can do for a bulb onion like this is rot them by covering them with soil. But up there they are a risk of being pecked out by birds, but also from being completely frosted. So I'm going to put a frame over the top and then put a bit of a frost cover over the top of that, and I'll leave it there until they've solidly got their roots in the ground, and then it can come off and they can enjoy that warm sun. Well, I'm pleased to report that the shallots have been a fantastic success. For a really small amount of garden space and effort, they grew away and produced this fantastic crop. I've let it dry off and now I can store them for use right through the winter months. I'll replant some and I can give some away to some other gardeners. But really, this one for me has been a massive win. Now, let's check out another experiment from last winter. A soilless solution for my spuds to try and get around planting into the heavy clay soil here in the garden in central Victoria. Now, these bales are essentially just dry carbon, so to create a really good growing environment, you do have to add some things. I've got to add that moisture and the nutrients. You should see the tops of potatoes come through in about 3 or 4 weeks. And then hopefully by the end of summer, I should be able to cut that baling twine, harvest a stack of spuds, and get all that rotten straw to put on the garden as well. This experiment didn't quite go to plan. It was really effective. For the first few weeks, the potatoes shot away and grew beautifully, but we had a lot of rain over a short period. It drained down the hill, the bales soaked it up and completely soaked and rotted my crop. So no spuds out of this, but of course in gardening, there's really no such thing as a total loss. And the straw, now fully rotted and wet, is going to make cracker compost. Oh, put you to such productive use. Now, let's travel back to 2021. I want to make a small pond, and I'm going to do it in this bathtub, which is perfect for it because it's already watertight. I'm going to create a native plant pond, and many of these species are actually indigenous to the local area. This is a very special little fish. It's a southern pygmy perch, and it is an endemic species to southeastern Australia. Now, they make fantastic pond fish because they are frog friendly. I'm happy to report that this little pond brings so much joy in the garden. It, of course, is growing lots of beautiful plants. The lythrum and the buttercup flower beautifully, and there's all of that beautiful vegetation, but it's also used by so many species. Dragonflies, birds visit, and it also is still home to a great little population of rare pygmy perch. Now, the truth is I never see them. They're hidden down under the shade of the vegetation and the deck. That's why I put it there. But they keep the mozzies completely under control. I've also installed a little solar pump, so through the day this water trickles and it helps to aerate the water. And I do need to top that level up, but here in town our water is chlorinated, so I never add it straight into the pond. It's bad for the fish. Instead, I've got a little system. I fill up the bucket, and then after about 24, 48 hours, those chemicals have evaporated and I can pour that straight into the pond. For such a little investment of space and effort, this is a big win. It's not always a clear win or loss. Sometimes there's grey-green areas. What I've built is essentially a dry stone wall. Now, the wall is doing a great job already retaining all of the soil for this garden bed up here, but it is also going to provide me a fantastic microclimate to try a few new plants. One plant that I always want in my garden is this one. It's Capparis spinosa, the caper bush. And in Italy, I saw these seeded in walls and on buildings, and that's exactly what I want to try and create here. The wall project, well, I've had mixed results here. The capers that I pretty much built it to grow have failed. I suspect it was the timing. It was just getting too cold and they went dormant and they rotted away. So I'm going to try again in early spring and hopefully I'm going to have success. A lot of the pocket plantings also failed. They just got too hot and dry, but one has been really successful, and that is Chrysanthemum maritimum. It's a great little herb or vegetable that you can add to lots of dishes. So in this case, this project, it's not a win, it's not a loss. I don't think it's even a draw, because everything in the garden is a lesson about how you might have better success in the future. Last winter, you might remember I planted a red flesh peach tree that I'd grown from seed. It was a wonky little tree and I wasn't really sure if it would take in our heavy clay soil. I gave it some really tough love with the secateurs. I always end up going too far. All right, walk away now. I'm going to see how it responds and hopefully this little stick will grow into a fantastic, delicious, beautiful, homegrown peach tree. Actually, I'm just going to take the whole centre out and we'll see what happens. Ta-da! Well, you can see what happens when you prune a tree quite hard. You get lots of vigorous response, particularly if you do it in winter. I'm really happy with this. I wasn't convinced it was going to be as strong. I'm not going to prune this tree now. I want all these leaves to stay on. I want it to keep photosynthesising and building energy. So instead, I'm just going to give it a really light feed with some organic fertiliser as it goes into its dormancy. It's getting even more energy. Because this is a seed-grown tree, I'm not 100% sure it's even going to bear beautiful fruit, but it is still worth trying. So the jury is still out on how much of a success this is, but our initial report, pretty leafy. Any gardener will tell you, no matter how long you've been doing it, there's always something new to try. And sometimes that'll be a great success. Other times it'll go completely pear-shaped. You'll fail. But it's no reason not to try. And it doesn't matter how things work out, you'll always get some sort of reward. Oh, yum. That's delicious.
Still to come on Gardening Australia, Jane shows us how to make your potting mix go the extra mile.
You can reuse old potting mix and just go about rejuvenating it.
Clarence takes a close look at an Aussie favourite.
Lily pillies have got the lot.
And Sophie checks out an incredible installation blurring the lines between nature and art.
Once you get inside here, it's another world.
This is what I call happiness in progress. It's so awesome to see that the school has an orchard, and with a couple more years of patience, they'll be harvesting apricot, plums, cherries, apples and figs, just to name a few. While fruit trees are a little bit of a slow burn, sometimes instant gratification is good too. Maybe you need some colour in your life, like pronto. Well, Josh is here to show you how.
Heat waves. We get a few of them out west, especially at this time of year. As gardeners, how can we prepare for these types of conditions? That's a question the team at Kings Park and Botanic Gardens have been tackling. Ali, despite the scale of this place, I'm assuming that many of the challenges you're facing would be similar to those of us at home. For example, how have the gardens gone with the crazy heat this summer?
It has been a challenge. It's been a really, really hot summer so far. A lot of our well-established plants are really resilient and used to this kind of climate to an extent. Another strategy we use is to plant a really great suite of lovely species from some of the hotter areas within Western Australia, and they absolutely thrive in these hot temperatures. Here we are. Here's a perfect example of a resilient plant in these hot summer months we've been having in Perth. This is Crotalaria cunninghamii, or the green bird flower, so named for these beautiful bird-shaped flowers that sit in this lovely panicle held high above these lovely soft grey-green leaves. It also follows on with these lovely pods here that rattle once they're ripe with seed. Quite a nice ornamental feature in their own right. We treat it as an annual here, but it does get quite woody and it does have some perenniality in its natural range in the Kimberley, Pilbara, the desert regions of Western Australia.
The flowers look like origami. They're so detailed in their folding.
Yep.
Do they persist in the hot weather?
They do. They last really well. You can see from these arrangements here, they actually start to flower at the top of the panicle and open slowly all the way down. So they do last a good long while, even in the really hot weather. Here's an iconic Northwest Australian plant, the Tylotus exaltatus, mulla mulla. It's got these beautiful sort of violet pink almost flowers that sit atop the stems with this lovely blue-green, leathery, still quite soft but robust foliage. And the plant itself here in Kings Park probably gets between 50 to 75 centimetres tall. And as you can see, it spreads quite nicely and fills a space in the garden or in a pot if you prefer to grow them in a pot. We plant them out as seedlings. We find that we get the best results that way.
In the wild, you see them as sort of mass displays. I guess there's no reason why you couldn't create the same kind of effect as a bedding plant at home.
Absolutely. If you had an open space on your verge, other areas in your garden that's sort of a bit bare in summer, you could plant some of these in and let them spread and ramble and fill that space over those hotter months. It'd look great.
How about care? Do you find they need a bit of pruning to keep them tidy over the growing season?
Yeah, it's entirely up to you. So you can prune them. We do that here sometimes. Sometimes we just let them run. Other times, if they're getting a bit scrappy at the end, we might prune them back down into a healthy pair of leaves. And then we do find that they shoot on again and flower again. Another beautiful species that we grow is Gomphrena canescens, bachelor's buttons. A little bit similar in flower to this one, but hot pink and a more globular flower head. A little bit finer foliage, and that comes from up in those hot northern regions as well, up through the Pilbara and Kimberley. Gets to about 50 centimetres or so with us, also spreads out beautifully, good for in a pot or planting en masse through those hot areas in the garden over summer.
Speaking of iconic, arid land, heat-tolerant annuals, you can't go past the desert pea.
You sure can't. It is absolutely stunning. This comes from inland arid regions all around Australia, apart from Victoria, and it's found growing here in WA, in the north, in from the desert out to the Pilbara coast. And we grow it here in Kings Park, treat it as a sprawling annual in our bed displays, in our gardens, but also we grow it as a pot specimen as well, and it grows very well in a pot.
So this one's well known and loved, but what's this little ripper?
That gorgeous little thing there is a Calandrinia mirabilis. Mirabilis being Latin for extraordinary and wonderful. And you can see why. It's got these stunning hot pink flowers, succulent-like fleshy green leaves. And this is found up in the Gascoyne and Murchison regions inland and grows over those very, very hot conditions there. And so we just treat it as an annual here in our displays over the summer months.
What's the availability like of these species for the home gardener?
So a lot of them are readily available, either as seed or as plants. So for example, the Swainsona you could get as a seed or as a plant. Same with the mulla mulla, the Tylotus, the bachelor's buttons, the Gomphrena, and also the Crotalaria, the green bird flower. Things like this lovely Calandrinia here, not so readily available yet, but we hope that one day in the future we can make more of these climate-resilient plants available for gardeners to use over those hot summer months.
What's the timing of planting to have these flowers looking at their best during the heat?
So we sow them, all of the species that we've spoken about today, in mid-September, grow them on under glass, harden them off and then plant them out, usually late November to mid-December as we're coming into our hotter time of the year in Perth. We keep them well watered so they get a deep soak twice a week. That's sufficient for them and that just keeps them growing nicely even during these really hot temperatures that we've been having.
We all want to reduce waste and we want to save a bit of money. So here's a very nifty trick. With a few simple steps, you can reuse old potting mix and just go about rejuvenating it. And this silver beet is an ideal example. I'm going to harvest it. This will be great for dinner, and I'm not going to waste this. I'm going to replant that silver beet. It's got little buds coming out, and if I put that in the veggie garden, it'll reshoot from that rather funny looking base. And I'm also going to completely rejuvenate the soil. Don't just throw it away. So take out the silver beet from the pot. Don't use the old potting mix if it's been exposed to pests and diseases. Just shake the old roots so that you can get a bit more of that potting mix out. And there we go. And now all I have to do is add some compost. This is homegrown compost. And if I just mix that into the old potting mix, it's going to do it no end of good. You could also use slow release fertiliser pills if you want to, but compost will really do the job too. So that's a really easy way to completely change that old potting mix into something with new life in it. And away you go. You can sow and grow to your heart's content.
Sometimes familiar and common plants can be taken for granted, but there's usually a reason why they're so widely planted. Clarence is here to remind us why one particular garden classic is such a genuine winner.
With over 50 different species of lily-pilly in Australia and heaps of cultivars going around, there's plenty to choose from. Lily-pillies have got the lot. You can pick up varieties for hedging or topiary, and there's a vast selection of shrubs and trees that'll grow in containers or in your ornamental garden. And the best thing is, they all produce fantastic fruit. Now, a couple of attractive species that I reckon are worth a grow for the fruit alone are Syzygium australe, the Creek lily-pilly, which after flowering gives you an edible red berry that's a little apple-like in texture. And its close cousin, Syzygium lemanii, also known as native ryeberry. And this gives you a tiny pinkish red fruit, which is absolutely delicious. Lily-pillies are tough, and they can tolerate dry conditions and most soil types once they're established. However, if you want to get the most out of your lily-pillies, because they're from our East Coast rainforests, they will love it if you give them a feed every now and then. Now, any organic fertiliser will be fine, or top dressed with compost or even aged cow manure. Also, water regularly. They thrive in rich, slightly moist, well-drained soils, and you'll get quality fruit and flowers. Lily-pillies like a sunny or part shade position. Growing here in part shade is Syzygium wilsonii. This one's from the lowland rainforests of far north Queensland, and it will grow in climates right down to Sydney. This one here is Syzygium cascade. Now, it's a hybrid. Its parents are Syzygium wilsonii and Syzygium lemanii. Cascade has a shrub form with pink powder puff flowers followed by fruit. The new growth is this flush of gorgeous pink, which gives a beautiful weeping form that looks great in a large pot or tub. Now, you can also mass plant these to form a really dense hedge. There's also a cultivar of Syzygium lemanii you could try. It's called Syzygium lulu. Now, it grows into a small, neat tree, and the new growth is a shade of hot pink. It also has edible berries. You can grow it in a container or plant a few as a privacy screen. Some lily-pillies are loved not just by us, but psyllid insects also love them. Now, they like burrowing into the soft new growth, and this causes pimples on the leaves. Now, they won't kill the plant, but it can be unsightly. And there are plenty that are not overly susceptible, like the ones we're looking at today. And there are a heap of cultivars being bred to be psyllid resistant. If you're unsure, you can always ask your local nursery. This lily-pilly is Acmina cherry surprise, and it's been bred to be psyllid resistant. The new growth is coppery red, and as it gets older, the foliage turns to deep green. Now, it is used for hedging, where it can get up to about 2 or 3 metres high. This one here is Syzygium australe, and it's at least 5 years old, but of course it's not just one tree, it's about 5 or 6 to form this beautiful hedge. Now, if you are trimming to control the height, it's worth thinking about how much the trim plant will grow back. Now, if you're pruning in late winter or spring, for example, the new growth will be vigorous and it might grow back something like 30 or 40 centimetres. Now, in the cooler autumn weather, the new growth will be much less. So, whether you prune your lily-pilly late winter, early spring, or in autumn, estimate how much the plant will grow back and take off at least that much. Now, this one is Acmina Allen's Magic. And after you've gone over it with the shears, you can come back with your secchies and tidy it up. So, snip back to the nodes. And this is where the new growth will shoot from. Lily-pillies don't need a whole lot of pampering, but a little TLC goes a long way. Regular watering, feeding and pruning, you'll be amply rewarded with good-looking foliage, flowers and fruit.
Now, there's garden art and there's garden art. Some of us might consider the humble garden gnome to be enough. But Sophie's at an exhibition where they're taking things to the next level.
Humans have always turned to art to help us communicate, make sense of, or just be in the world. And considering we are nature, it of course makes sense that art often explores the natural world. The Adelaide Botanic Gardens is a place that I love and know very well. But today, around every corner, there are bursts of bright contrasting colours that transform the familiar to the extraordinary. These huge glass installations are part of an exhibition from American contemporary artist Dale Chihuly. Each piece has been designed specifically to be displayed in botanical garden landscapes. For over 20 years, Chihuly's architectural pieces have been displayed in botanic gardens all over the world.
That way, if you get the stems up high, then you can show the whole waterfall. Could go anywhere in there, Tom.
And for a while, they're here in Adelaide.
So you take sand and fire and put it together, and you have glass. And you make, it turns into a liquid. Imagine, the sand turns into a liquid, and then you stick a pipe in there and gather it up like honey and bring it out and blow down there, and you blow a shape that over the centuries, glass blowers have learned to make it into an incredible array of forms. And I've been lucky enough to come along at the right time, at the right place, to be able to expand many of the forms that were made throughout this 2,000-year history. When you look at my work, it's very organic. If I hung a chandelier or had some parts coming out of the ground and we had them in the forest and you came around the corner, your first thought might be that that was something made by nature.
There are 23 artworks around the garden, some up to 20 years old. Some of these works involve thousands of individual pieces, which have all been carefully transported around the world and installed with painstaking detail. The colours and shapes are bold and architectural and placed strategically to stand out against dark foliage, contrast against the many shades of green of their surrounds, cast reflections and play with translucency and sunlight. I'm finding it hard to choose a favourite because I truly love them all, but I'm going to show you some of the ones that are going to stay with me long after the exhibition is over, because they were made specifically for the Adelaide Botanic Garden. This is the Jet and Crimson Fiore. The strong shapes and vivid colours are inspired by our South Australian floral emblem, the Sturt Desert Pea. Another piece made specially for this exhibition is suspended from the ceiling of the 19th century palm house. This is the Glacier and Lapis Chandelier, designed by Chihuly to celebrate the iconic blue glass of this beautiful building. One of the things I love about this exhibition is that it's not indoors in one of the kinds of institutions where people are used to seeing art. Instead, it's outside in the elements for everyone to discover.
I hope that it, gets people that are interested in gardens and greenhouses to get them interested in art, and vice versa. So because lots of people are missing out by not going to conservatories, and that would be the majority of people probably. And they are, once you get inside here, it's another world.
Gardens are the perfect place for art, whether created by a world-renowned artist like this one, or something you've made yourself in your own backyard. While making something like this is definitely out of my league, bright, bold colours will always have a place in my heart and in my gardens.
Buckle up, everyone. Here's your list of jobs for the weekend. Gardeners in cool areas, your zucchinis are on their way out. To prolong the harvest, remove older, larger leaves that are getting daggy, and don't be afraid to remove plants that are too far gone. If your tomatoes haven't looked at the calendar and are still pumping out fruit, remember green tomatoes can be ripened indoors on a sunny windowsill or just turned into chutney. Make some room in your garden for Lythrum salicaria or purple loosestrife, an adaptable native perennial with incredible spikes of purple flowers. In warm temperate areas, you're heading into the prime time for weeds to set seed. Get on top of it now to save you a headache in the future. Check your hanging baskets as they can dry out and become hydrophobic over summer. Apply a top dressing of compost and organic wetting agent to rehydrate. For a tropical feel in a tight spot, try a walking stick palm. It's native, slow growing, frost hardy and maxes out at around 2 metres. In the subtropics, now is a good time to sow leafy amaranth. In warm, damp soil, you'll have fresh greens in 3 weeks. Call your local council and find out what they do with their chipped tree clippings. It's often a cheap or free source of mulch. In season now are the edible nuts of the bunya pine. An important food to First Nations people like the Cubby Cubby, the nuts are extracted from enormous cones and eaten raw, boiled, roasted or ground into flour. In the tropics, time is almost up to take advantage of the wet season for planting fruit trees. The extra moisture in the soil means it's the ideal time to get some new tasty tropical treasures into your garden. Remember to keep up the liquid fertiliser as nutrients are being leached from the soil by the monsoonal rains. remedy with fortnightly applications of fish emulsion. If you've got a rambutan and it's fruiting, remember fruit won't ripen once picked, so be patient. They're best harvested in early morning when the fruit is fully hydrated. In arid areas, radishes can be sown from seed now and expect a harvest in a little over a month. Don't forget to top up water sources in your garden like bird baths and ponds to make sure they continue to be an oasis to local wildlife. Looking for a medium-sized native shade tree that laughs at the heat? Try Alocasuarina decasniana or desert oak. Reaching 10 metres, the thick bark helps it survive drought and resist fire. Welcome back, gardeners. We can't wait to show you what we've got planned for you this year. Well, that's all we could fit in for this week, but I promise you we're just getting started for the year ahead. Here's what's coming up next time. Oh, go away.
I'm looking at how to combine edible and ornamental plants to maximise colour, diversity and pollination.
Jerry shows us how to grow a plant with an appetite.
These are tropical carnivorous plants. Most of them come from Southeast Asia.
And I'm visiting a native nursery in North Fremantle that's become an institution for local gardeners.
We care about the planet. Greener planet, connected world.